Pass me the plates and you take the cutlery.
Kizzy, my younger sister, said as we entered the kitchen. Mom was almost finished with her famous spaghetti and meatball combo. Dad was on a business trip and wouldn't be back in 3 months. He had opened another branch of his business in another country, and he was overseeing that everything was finalized with his new location before coming home. Mom plated the food and placed it on the table.
Okay, girls, it's time to dig in.
Mom, did you add something else to the recipe? It's different. I placed another bite into my mouth.
Different good or different bad?
I'm not sure yet, I said as I chewed slower, trying to see if I could figure out what the extra ingredient was. Kizzy stuffed more food into her mouth.
I don't know what you're complaining about. It tastes the same to me.
I laughed. That's because you have the palate of a 5-year-old. My life with my family is usually like any other family, normal. But in the upcoming months, things took a strange turn. Keep watching to see what I mean. Over the next couple of weeks, Kizzy played in her soccer tournaments. She was the only athlete in the family. Since Mom and Dad were usually too busy with work, I made it my duty as her big sister to go to every one of her games. I was happy when Mom showed up for Kizzy's semi-qualification game. That morning, Kizzy complained of a headache, but that didn't seem to stop her as she scored 2 goals for her team. In the last 10 minutes of the second half of the game, I watched in horror as Kizzy stopped mid of kicking the ball and shouted,
I can't see! I can't see!
Mom and I ran onto the field where Kizzy was surrounded by the rest of her teammates and her coach.
Kizzy!
Mom cried as she approached her.
Mom! Mom!
Kizzy's arms frailed in front of her in an attempt to reach out to Mom. Mom hugged Kizzy.
Let's get you to the clinic to check you out. Mom, I'm scared.
It's okay, Kizzy. You'll be okay. I squeezed her hand comfortingly. About 30 minutes later, we pulled up to Mom's clinic. She ran inside and exited with an orderly in a wheelchair. Mom helped Kizzy into the chair and told the orderly which room to set her up in. I held Kizzy's hand as Mom ran numerous tests on Kizzy. After all the tests, Mom sat down with Kizzy, a look of confusion on her face.
I just can't understand what could be the cause of this. None of your tests show anything abnormal. So, will I be blind forever? Don't worry, Kizzy. I'll find out why this is happening.
Kizzy broke down and cried. I cried with her, and when we both calmed down, Mom told Kizzy that she had to stay at the clinic for the next few days until she knew what the problem was. I begged Mom to stay, but she said I had to go to school.
I'll stay with Kizzy, and you'll go stay with Aunt Pearl.
Aunt Pearl was Dad's younger sister who lived a few houses away from us. Kizzy and I loved her, and she and Mom were great friends. Fine. About an hour later, Aunt Pearl got to the clinic. She spent some time with Kizzy before we headed home to collect my things for school before we headed to her house.
Your mom is the best doctor I know. If anybody could find out what's going on with Kizzy, it's her.
Aunt Pearl squeezed my shoulders. Aunt Pearl suggested that we watch TV to get our minds off things, but all I could think about was Kizzy not being able to watch TV. I snuggled into Auntie Pearl on the sofa. She hugged me, and that's where I fell asleep. I stayed with Aunt Pearl until Dad came back home a few days later. He stayed with Kizzy during the day at the clinic and stayed with me in the evenings. Dad, when Kizzy comes home tomorrow, can I throw her a welcome home party?
I think that's a great idea. After school, we can go to the mall and get some decorations and order her favorite foods.
I'll go and call her friends now so they can tell their parents.
Good idea,
Dad said as we packed the remaining dinner into the fridge. By the end of the night, Kizzy's closest friends confirmed they were coming to the party. I was happy Kizzy was coming home. The house felt empty without her. The next evening, everyone got to the house at 6 p.m. when Mom's car pulled into the driveway and we all waited for the door to open.
Welcome home, Kizzy!
We shouted as the front door opened. Kizzy froze.
Why are you guys here? Jessica, what did you do? Why did you bring my friends over to see me like this?
Kizzy, I just thought...
That's it! You don't think! Dad, can you please take me to my room?
Embarrassed, I apologized and Mom volunteered to take Kizzy's friends home. Dad came to the living room and sat next to me.
I'm sorry it didn't work out. You know Kizzy loves you, right?
I nodded.
She just needs time to adjust.
I sighed. I was just so happy to have her home.
Well, maybe you should go tell her that.
Dad kissed me on the forehead and told me goodnight. I went to Kizzy's room and knocked on the door before I pushed it open. The room was in darkness. I saw Kizzy's outline in her bed and moved to sit on her bed. I'm sorry about tonight. I was just so happy to have you home and your friends wanted to see you. I'm sorry if I made you upset.
I'm sorry, Jessie. I just wasn't prepared for everyone to see me bumping into walls and tripping over my own 2 feet.
We'll get through this together. Over the next few weeks, I helped Kizzy adapt to her new lifestyle. Aunt Pearl helped Kizzy during the day and kept her abreast of her schoolwork, and I helped after school. One afternoon, as soon as I walked through the door, Auntie Pearl pulled me to the kitchen.
Kizzy is in a horrible mood. I've been trying the whole day to cheer her up, but nothing is working.
Maybe I can talk to her.
I was hoping you'd say that.
Aunt Pearl smiled. Hey, Kizzy. I stepped into her room. Aunt Pearl said you were having a bad day.
I've been having a bad couple of weeks, wouldn't you say?
Is there anything I can do?
Can you get my eyesight back?
When I didn't respond, she snapped.
I don't think so. Please leave my room.
I exited Kizzy's room without another word. Kizzy barely spoke a word to me over the next 2 weeks. Mom and the other doctors at the clinic still had no clue why Kizzy still didn't have her sight back. I felt as though my family was falling apart. Kizzy and I weren't close anymore, and Mom and Dad were always fighting even though they pretended everything was okay. Aunt Pearl decided to take Kizzy and I for a weekend so Mom and Dad could have some much-needed alone time. Mom dropped us across by Aunt Pearl and told us to have a great weekend. As I unpacked my school books, I realized that I forgot my history book, and I had a big test on Monday. Aunt Pearl told me to run home for it and hurry back since she was almost finished with lunch. I darted home, opened the front door, and picked up my history book from on the desk in my room. As I was heading out of the house, I heard Mom chatting with someone in the kitchen. When I peeked in, her back was turned to me. She was on the phone. I was about to say something when Mom said something that made my heart sink.
Yes, I gave it to both of them, but Kizzy was the only one who had side effects.
Mom listened for a bit before she responded once more.
Yes, the insurance money from Kizzy's eye loss will cover the expenses, and I'll be able to keep the clinic open.
I listened as Mom listed the name of the antidepressant that she had not only prescribed to Kizzy, but this is what Kizzy took twice a day.
Yes, I know. I have to continue giving it to her at least until the insurance money clears. If she regains her sight before they clear the check, we'll be back in the red.
Mom looked at her phone.
Let me call you back. I'm getting an incoming call from the clinic that I need to take.
I listened in as Mom confirmed that she'll be leaving home now to head to the clinic. I snuck back into my room and hid under the bed until I heard the engine of Mom's car in the driveway. I came from under the bed and peeked out the window. As soon as she drove off, I ran to the office in search of the insurance document that Mom was talking about. In one of Mom's desk drawers, there was a file with 2 insurance policies. One was for me and the other was Kizzy's. When I looked at the date, the policies were taken out about 5 months ago. My jaw dropped. That was right before Kizzy lost her vision. I scanned the document, and if either one of them incurred vision loss, the payout was $650,000. My hand shook as I pulled my phone from my back pocket and snapped pictures of each of the documents. I couldn't believe that Mom was responsible for Kizzy's vision loss. As soon as I took the pictures, I placed the documents back in the file and returned them to the drawer. I ran all the way back to Aunt Pearl's house.
Why do you look so out of breath?
Aunt Pearl looked at me when I walked through the front door. When I didn't answer, she got up from the chair she was sitting on and approached me.
Jessica, is everything okay?
I shook my head as the tears rolled down my face. Aunt Pearl gently took my hand and led me to the sofa where we sat. My voice shook as I told Aunt Pearl about what I heard.
You mean Mom is the reason I'm blind?
Aunt Pearl and I spun our heads in the direction of Kizzy's broken voice. Aunt Pearl helped Kizzy sit on the spade next to me.
I can't believe my own mother would do this to me.
Aunt Pearl comforted Kizzy with one hand while she looked at the pictures I took on my phone with the other. Kizzy, don't take any more of the medication that Mom prescribed to you. It's actually making your condition worse, not better. Kizzy nodded. Her body trembled next to mine.
Does your father know about this?
Aunt Pearl looked at me. I'm not sure. Do you think he's in on it?
Well, there is only one way to find out. Excuse me, girls. I have some business to take care of.
Aunt Pearl got up and went into the kitchen to use her phone there. After about an hour, Aunt Pearl returned and told us to get ready. She's taking us to get some tests done at another medical facility. She said Dad didn't know anything about what was happening, and he was furious, and also the one who suggested the tests. We got to the medical facility and everything took about 30 minutes to complete. Aunt Pearl said she would take us for some ice cream before we headed back to her place. As soon as I opened the door to exit the medical facility, I spotted Mom. Aunt Pearl, I think we have a problem. I stepped back into the facility. Aunt Pearl stood in front of Kizzy and I protectively as Mom pushed open the door.
Hi, what are you guys doing here?
Mom's eyes glanced at the cotton swabs on Kizzy's and my arm. I think she put 2 and 2 together since her polite demeanor changed to one of hostility.
Why did you bring my children here, Pearl?
Mom looked at Aunt Pearl squarely in the eyes.
I brought them here to get some blood work done, which, by the way, was requested by their father.
Mom and Aunt Pearl argued, and I held Kizzy's hand wondering what to do. Mom tried to get past Aunt Pearl, but Aunt Pearl was not having it.
If you don't hand me my kids, I'll call the police.
Mom called.
You do that.
Aunt Pearl called after her as Mom walked out of the facility. Aunt Pearl called Dad and told him what happened. He told us to wait there until he arrived. Dad arrived 15 minutes later. He told us that we were to stay with Aunt Pearl until everything was sorted out. Kizzy and I hopped into Aunt Pearl's car, and Dad followed us home to make sure we got there safely. I slept in the next day, and when I went into the kitchen to grab something to eat, Dad was sitting there talking with Aunt Pearl. They both had grave looks on their faces. What's wrong?
We got back the tests that you and Kizzy took yesterday. The antidepressant was found in both of your blood work.
But I don't understand. How did Kizzy get blinded by it and I didn't? Aunt Pearl replied,
Well, medication affects people differently.
Can it be reversed? I sank into the kitchen chair next to Dad.
We aren't sure, but I'll do everything that I can to get Kizzy the best help possible.
Dad was true to his word and made sure that Kizzy saw the best doctors. First, he took her to get her blood detoxified before Kizzy's appointment with Dr. Regina Montreal. The next few weeks played out like a movie. Dad kept us at Aunt Pearl's and hired security guards to stand outside the house. He also hired a private investigator to get all the evidence he needed to bring charges against Mom for fraud and child endangerment. Once Dad got all the information he needed, he went to the police station. Mom was arrested and Dad filed for a divorce. Slowly but surely, Kizzy's eyesight returned. It took her a year before she was able to see colors and focus on the things in front of her. She now wears glasses, and even though she can't play soccer anymore, she goes to every game to cheer on her former teammates. Mom got 20 years in prison, and unknown to the others, I visit Mom on weekends. I am angry at her, but I do forgive her. I believe everyone should be given a second chance. Don't you?